So I wish I had saved this magazine. I was at a friend's house and I was looking at this magazine. It was a long time ago. And I've tried to find it again, never can. But it was a Life magazine. And it had big glossy pictures, pages and pages of pictures. And the first picture was a family, maybe somewhere in Africa, standing in front of their hut. And they had asked the family to stand and to take everything out of their house and spread it out in front of them. And so they had a blanket with all their stuff. And it was fascinating to just look at this picture. The way their house looked, the clothes they were wearing, the things they had in front of them, spears and bowls, and just, what kind of stuff do they own? What do they have? It was a fascinating picture. And then I turned the page and there was another family, maybe somewhere in China, and they had all of their stuff spread in front of them. And it was just mesmerizing just to look at a different culture, the way they live and the things they have. And so this went on, page after page after page. It was fascinating, beautifully photographed. And then I started to notice that the places they were going were getting more and more prosperous, and there was more and more stuff. More and more stuff on every page. And then there was some place in Europe where it just jumped, where there was way more stuff. And I thought, oh no, we haven't even gotten to the U.S. yet. I didn't want to look. I wasn't ready. But I thought, all right, turn the page. And there was a picture of a family in the U.S. And it happened to be Texas. It happened to be somewhere near Dallas. And it was not like a mansion. It wasn't a big fancy house. It was just a normal middle-class house and a normal middle-class family. They lived on a cul-de-sac, and that was a good thing because it took the entire cul-de-sac for them to have all their things spread out. It was sickening. It really was. I mean, they just had so much of everything. And they had two little girls, so they were posed with their family. And in the area, they had things kind of by category. And the little girls' toys, I mean, there were just rows and rows of Barbie shoes. As opposed to these families that didn't even have rows and rows of human shoes. It was just overwhelming to be hit in the face with just how much stuff the average American has. And part of it was that I was looking around like, I have that stuff. I have kids. I have that many toys. It looks like a lot, but I have about that much too. In my house, we have a stuff problem. And it's a spiritual problem. And Jesus addresses it. When he tells the parable of this man who has enough, but he just keeps building these bigger barns so that he can just keep taking in more and more and more. And his goal is to have his soul be satisfied. But of course it never is. And this is such a spiritual problem that even non-spiritual people, even the secular world, is talking about this and talking about how we can use less and not have to have one plastic fork that you take 3 bites with and throw away. We're getting more aware of this. There's lots of popular shows on TV, shows about hoarders, and you kind of sit there like, ooh, do I do some of that? And then that show Tidying Up with Marie Kondo, I watched them all. Anybody else? She would do the same thing, encourage people to take out all their clothes and go through each one. And her question, as she hold up each thing, does this spark joy? And if it doesn't spark joy, you get rid of it. And what I don't understand, like my vacuum cleaner doesn't spark joy, but I'm going to keep that. So I don't know how that test works with everything. But clean house sparks joy. But you notice that what we're depending on for our joy is our stuff. And so Jesus talks about this to the people. And the antidote for this is to trust God. To not be thinking that we need so much stuff to protect ourselves, to make ourselves happy, but to fully trust God. And so we read the scripture from Exodus where God tells the people that they should trust him, that they will have enough food for every day. So they leave Egypt, where they have a lot of stuff, a lot of good food. They're slaves, but they have stuff. And he brings them out of captivity, and they start complaining because they want their stuff back. And so he says, I'm going to give you food, but you have to trust me that I'm giving you food for today. And tomorrow I'll give you food again, and the next day I'll give you food again. And on the day before the Sabbath, I'll give you double food so you can collect it. And when they tried to collect more and hoard it, it would rot. So they couldn't collect more. They could only take what they needed for that day for each person. And God kept them in the wilderness for a generation because he was molding them and forming them into a people who knew how to trust him. Before they could live in their own land, they needed to be people who knew how to trust him. And I think God is still molding and forming us into people who know how to trust him, because we still have that soul problem of collecting too much stuff and not fully trusting in God. So how do we do that? How do we learn to fully trust God in that way? Well, I think the first thing is to just recognize that we have stuff and it's a gift from God. We often are so focused on what we don't have that we forget what we do have. We don't count our blessings enough. Imagine if, I'm assuming like me, if you get a paycheck, it just goes directly to your bank. What if you got your paycheck and you took it to the bank and you asked them to give it to you in $1 bills? What would that pile of money look like? And I'm not going to encourage you to roll around in it. I mean, you can if you want. But do you realize how much money you get with every paycheck? Or do you think about how much you don't get? I was an associate pastor for several years. There was a senior pastor over me. It was a pretty large church. And we were always worried about money, because that's what churches do. You worry that you're not going to have enough money. Worry that you don't have enough money. And so we had done a pledge drive, a pledge campaign, and people had written down how much they're going to give the church. And the pastor was pretty freaked out because it wasn't enough. There was the budget and there was the pledges, and the pledges were lower than the year before. And he was really stressed about this, and I thought that was kind of ridiculous. And I looked at the numbers and I went, Pastor Jim, they have pledged almost $1 million to us. Almost $1 million. They have trusted you and me with almost $1 million. I'm doing a happy dance. That's a lot of money. And he kind of went, yeah. And I thought I was so wise until I became a solo pastor and I started to freak out about money. And no matter what you told me, I would still be afraid because it was on me, right? We do this. We don't look at what we have. We think about what we don't have. And so if we can focus on our blessings more. I asked the early service, I knew some of the hands that would go up, but I said, do you have an everyday practice that you do that you thank God for what you have? Anybody? See, I knew it. Look around, these are the happy people. It's hard, and I will confess to you that for most of my life I have not been one of those people. I would thank God for what I had, but it wasn't like a daily thing. I greatly love St. Ignatius, who had this practice several times a day to examine. So it's called the Ignatian Examine, when you pray through where God has been in your life, you think about how you've sinned, you think about what God has given you, and I've never been able to make that an everyday. And so one day I was doing that thing you do, well, the thing I do, maybe you don't, where you lay on the couch and the movie's over and you just think, I could just sleep here. I could just skip brushing my teeth and just lay here and just fall asleep because I'm too lazy to do all the things that you got to do every night. And so I finally dragged myself up off the couch and I thought, well, what if I make all of these things a prayer? What if I make brushing my teeth a prayer, putting on my pajamas, and thank God that I have teeth, and thank God that I have pajamas, and so I wear contacts. So I was trying to kind of make this little ritual. So as I was taking my contacts off, I thought, what if every time I take my contacts off, I ask myself, what is the best thing I've seen today? And then I stood there for a while and thought of everything I had seen that day. And it was not a special day, it was an ordinary day. But when I thought about the best thing I had seen, it was hard to pick because I had seen many good things that day. And I became more aware and more filled with gratitude this ordinary day as I started to ask myself this question. And I have now been able to sustain that practice for about a year. Every night I say, what's the best thing today? And the cool thing is that sometimes I think of a person who blessed me that day, and the next day I could say, hey, you were my best thing yesterday. And people go, well. But I'm sure you've been somebody's best thing one day. You just didn't know it, and no one told you. And if we were better about telling each other, last Sunday when I knelt, I wasn't sure anybody would want to kneel, and I opened my eyes, and there was just all these people, some of whom I think had bad knees, kneeling with me. And I thought, this is my best thing. It's only early morning, and I already have a best thing. But I don't know if that would work for you. If you don't wear contacts, it wouldn't work for you. But if you can find something, if you don't already have something, as a way to train yourself every day to focus on what God has given you. Because the more you focus on what God has given you, the less you worry about what you think God hasn't given you yet. And so it's a good thing to do. Another thing to do is to just consciously decide to not keep accumulating so much stuff. I had a children's minister who noticed that we had a lot of stuff in the children's ministry area, pom-poms and pipe cleaners and glue, and the glue sticks dry up, so we just buy more and buy more and buy more. We had this mountain of glue sticks. And she said, what if we just decided, like for a year, we wouldn't buy anything in children's ministries? We would just use what we had. And it forced us to get more and more creative every week. And sometimes we bought stuff, but just that simple act of deciding. I have a friend, Jen, and her thing is she doesn't buy anything on Sundays. Sunday's the Lord's Day, so she doesn't shop. And so she has to think on Saturday, am I going to need anything tomorrow? And so it focuses her, tomorrow's a holy day. It's just her practice. So are there ways that we can make choices and decide that we're not going to be these kind of people? I think we can. And you have to ask yourself, what do I need to work on? As some of us, for some of us it's shoes, for some of us it's not. We all have our own thing. So another thing that you can do is to, I don't know, it's in my notes. Y'all have been going, you can preach without notes. And I'm like, you're going to curse me? Oh yeah. Giving. How could I forget that? Give away more. Give away more. Give to your church. Give to things that you support and agree with. Martin Luther said that everybody needs to have 3 conversions. You have a conversion of the heart, you have a conversion of the head, and then you have a conversion of the purse. And some of us don't ever get to the purse part. I love you, God, I believe in you, I say all the right things, but this is mine. We need to have that 3rd conversion. John Wesley said, make all you can, save all you can, and give all you can. It's a great quote. He really did say, make all you can. It's not bad to make money. It's not bad to be successful. It's not bad to be good at what you do and be compensated for it. He didn't want people to be lazy. Make all you can. Save all you can. It's not bad to save. The problem with the man in the story was not that he saved. It's that he saved all for himself. It's okay to save what you need. Did you notice in the story the man said to his soul, soul, what should I do? He was talking to himself. I presume he had nobody else to talk to. Or else his financial matters were not anybody else's business. Not his family's, not his God's, not his co-workers. He didn't consult anybody else and say, what should I do with this money? He didn't consult God and say, what should I do with this money? It was all about what he wanted to do. Hey, self, what are we going to do with this stuff? And so saving is not bad. It's just knowing that line between saving and hoarding, and how am I talking to God about what I'm saving. And then finally, the give all you can. When you believe in what God is doing in the world, you'll put your money behind it. I heard this disturbing story about this man gave $1 million to the Boy Scouts, and this pastor realized that this man was a Methodist. He hadn't given $1 million to the Methodist Church, so he asked for a meeting with this man, and he said, I noticed you're a great philanthropist, and you gave $1 million to the Boy Scouts. Why don't you give it to the church? And he said, my church wouldn't know what to do with it. Ouch. Are we a trustworthy place for people to give? And so my goal is to inspire you that if you give to this church, it will be well cared for. It should be all of our duties, so that we can make all we can, save all we can, give all we can to our church. So I want to show you how this scripture began and also how it ends. It began with 2 sons arguing over inheritance. They were arguing over who got what. And the Puritans had this word, cumber. Cumber is all your stuff. So when something is cumbersome or you're encumbered and stuff becomes a cumber, it was making these 2 brothers fight with each other. And so Jesus tells this parable, and after the parable, he says this, therefore I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat, or about your body, what you will wear. For life is more than food, and the body is more than clothing. Consider the ravens, they neither sow nor reap, they have neither storehouses nor barns, and yet God feeds them. How much more value are you than the birds? Can any of you, by worrying, add a single hour to the span of your life? If then you are not able to do a small thing as that, why do you worry about the rest? Consider the lilies, how they grow. They neither toil nor spin, yet I tell you, even Solomon in all his glory was not clothed like one of these. But if God so clothes the grass of the field, which is alive today and tomorrow is thrown into the oven, how much more will he clothe you, you of little faith? And do not keep striving for what you're to eat and what you are to drink, and do not keep worrying. For it is the nations of the world that strive after these things, and your Father knows that you need them. Instead, strive for his kingdom, and these things will be given to you as well. Amen?